When I was getting ready for this interview today, Lindsay, I was looking at some of your work, and some of the stuff that struck me actually was the work on getting older, right? And so I was actually very curious if we could even just start there.
Yeah,
And, it does seem like it's a theme for you,
sure.
awareness of getting older and these milestone moments clocking themselves in and
hmm
then causing you to pause, stop, and reflect. So I'm curious about that.
It has been a theme of my whole life. But I don't know why. I think that the first time I ever I remember, I don't know if you got this far back. I wrote a piece when I turned 35 on my blog about how I was being middle aged, and I probably got 25 insanely critical emails, like just beyond. And like, how can you be so crazy? You're so young. And I was like, okay, so Carl Jung, who knows a lot more than me, or maybe not living anymore, knew a lot more than me, um, said that was a midlife story. I was not trying to make a, I don't know what the word, provocative statement. I think of middle age as like a range, and it's not the midpoint of your life. I'm hoping to live past 70, but like, come on. And so that was the first time I was aware that like not everybody thought about this quite the same way or as much as I do.
Yeah. So how do you feel about aging?
You know, it's funny. Nobody's asked me that so directly. I mean, I guess I feel it's hard at the age of 50, as we all are, or 51. I'm so 50, but whatever, we're all turning 51. It's hard not to be super aware of it at this moment, but it's also like, I don't know what the alternative is. So I kind of feel like whenever people complain about it, I'm kind of like, what, I mean, I don't know what, there's no other choice other than not living. And so it's hard to complain about it. It feels like a very bittersweet part of life, which is in itself a bittersweet endeavor in my view.
Yeah. I've noticed that tone in your writing, actually. This bittersweetness is actually the main thing that seems to come off
Yeah.
to me.
Yeah. No, and Susan Cain, who wrote a book called Quiet, which I highly recommend to everybody, wrote a book recently, I don't know, the last couple of years, called Bittersweet, that probably 50 people told me to read, and I did read, and it's wonderful. But I agree with you. That's a defining sentiment in my life for sure. But I don't know. I don't personally view that as a bad thing. Like, I think I don't know how to have one without the other. And so given that, I would choose both.
Yeah. Right. Do you feel like the sensitivity that you possess and that is what drives the pensiveness and that therefore might drive the writing itself, the thinking?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, I think I've always been aware of being somewhat more attuned to, um, I don't know, everyday highs and lows, macro and micro, or micro and macro, right? So like little things have always hit me hard. And I've also felt more aware of the big picture of time's passage. And I remember writing that piece years ago about how like sometimes in the summer, when I'm walking barefoot, I feel like I can literally feel the earth turning under my feet, which is a, manifestation of what I'm talking about. So I've always been aware that for me, that feels a little more turned up than the average person.
Mm.
And so I have no doubt that that is what kind of led me to the page. And once I started writing, it sort of is a self-perpetuating thing.
Yeah, but what strikes me as well is you not only doing this work, but you have multiple identities,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
How would you think of those?
It's hard to even start. I have many identities. I am probably first and foremost a mom of two young adults. My kids are 22 and 20. I'm a wife to my husband. We've been married 25 years this year, which is amazing. I'm a daughter to my father's not living. My mother is a sister. I have one sister who's younger. I'm a business owner with 4 partners. I founded a company 8 years ago in finance. I'm a writer. I'm a reader. I don't run anymore. I used to be a runner. I'm an amateur yoga enthusiast. I like to cook. I mean, I don't know. I mostly read. I was joking around. My kids always joke about like reading is what happens when your joints go. And I'm like, yeah, but I've always chosen it forever. So Anyway, to me, I cannot imagine doing only one of those things. So for me, it is in the full complement of identities and pursuits that life feels richest.
And so with all of the things that you've been doing in your life, and I remember seeing you on the cross country course, and certainly remember you as part of that whole time, right, in our lives in the early 90s. So much has happened.
Yeah.
So you left Exeter, and then what happened?
I left Exeter and went to Princeton with like 25 of our classmates.
Right.
Not all of whom I don't think I could name them all. And when we were at Exeter, my dad was a twin going on with Wesley. He and my husband's a twin, so I'm fascinated by twin boys. But my dad went to Wesley and his twin went to Amherst. And I had written my early application to Amherst. My whole family went to Amherst. It was like the family school. And Labor Day weekend of our senior year, we were at my grandparents' house, which was their parents, in Long Island. And my dad's twin, his name is Terry, Lawrence III, was like, I don't think you're going to want to go to Amherst. I think it's going to be too small after Exeter. And my dad took me to see Princeton Labor Day Monday, which was deserted. But I will never forget. I looked at him and I was like, this is where I want to go to school. So I got deferred, and that was, crushing, applying to other schools, and ended up at Princeton. Did that for 4 years. Was an English major. Like, honestly, I had no idea what I wanted to be when I grew up. I applied to BCG because they came and recruited, and I did that. And then I applied to HBS because my whole class was applying to HBS, and I got in, so I went, which is not a great reason to go. And I went back. I mean, like, I just sort of followed the path, or what I perceived to be the path. And I married my husband. I had just turned 26. We got married. We were 24 when I got engaged. I was down with my family by 30. So I was like in this rush, and I can't explain. It was not conscious. And then my dad, who died in 2017, remains probably the central figure of my life. And he used to say of me all the time, which I was super offended by, but now I realize the truth of it. He used to always say, your greatest skill in life is doing just well enough to get to the next hardest thing. And he was totally right. And I wrote an entire memoir about him, which I never published, called A Country Without Maps. My dad he's really into maps. And I've written a lot about how he believed in like the ability to plan things out or to map things out. And one of my favorite images of him is when I was a kid, he used to sit down at the dining table after dinner and unfold a map of one of his favorite European cities and pour a glass of red wine and just sit there and look. And I just love that. So anyway, A Country Without Maps memoir was about like, as long as it was clear what the next hardest thing was, I was great. Like, you go to an Ivy League school, you go to an Ivy League business school, you get married, you have kids, boom, boom, boom. I did all those things. And suddenly I was like, what happens when there's no more math, right? And that was kind of me in my early 30s. Like, what am I aiming for now? So I would say that was when I started writing a lot. I kind of wandered aimlessly, I guess, in the field for several years. I was at BCG post-MBA for a lot of years. I had both my kids. I mean, I graduated from business school at 25 because I had gone so fast. Then I kind of, by luck, ended up in private equity doing search. And I loved it. And so that's how I ended up where I am now, which is in 2017 with 4 partners that founded a firm in finance, in private equity search. So I do that now. And my kids had begun to grow up by then. So and now they're gone. So, yeah.
I know. And when we were talking about like this episode plan, there were so many different subjects that came up, and amongst them was being a writer. It sounds like you're really working hard right now and sort of focusing on work. And I'm only going to guess it's because you just had to finish paying for one kid and are about to paying for the next to get through college.
Yeah, it's not a small thing.
It's not. And frankly, I would say that is the single thing I had in mind for why I waited so long. Just was so afraid of having to pay for kids, period.
Yeah. And they're not, yeah. And you have 2? We have 2. I mean, I feel like everyone around me has like 4 or 5. I'm like,
oh my God, that would be like for me crazy.
Yeah. Also, I mean, whatever. Everybody does their own thing and power to them. But I was like, I want 2 kids done.
For sure. No,
We
I
had so
get
many
it.
twins in our family. I was like, we're going to end up with 3. So yeah,
Right.
just stick with
Yeah.
that was it.
Yeah. So of all the things that are swirling around in your life though, Lindsay, catch us up. I mean, I get what you're saying about getting on the track.
Mm-hmm.
That doesn't feel super unfamiliar to probably most of us, right, in this audience. In some ways, I think there's some level of we're programmed like that.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. Um, but then 30 is young.
Yeah,
You get to 30 and you're young.
I know. I mean, I was pregnant with my second kid at my 30th birthday party. Like, that seems insane in retrospect. I think after that, there was like this probably decade of like, and I used to joke around to my dad about like, he used to always say, you made it so easy for us because you just went straight down the middle of the track. Like, you never, and I used to say to him, it's not too late, Dad. Don't tempt me. But it's like, I didn't ever go off the track, but I wandered in other ways, right? I wrote a lot. I spent a lot of time thinking. I worked part-time for the years that my kids were little. And now I feel like I've sort of stumbled into this thing I love. But it was a bunch of years of thinking about it. And like, when that next thing on the track isn't obvious, you have to decide what you care about. Right. And for
Right.
me, it was, I care about my family and I care about, I just started for the first time seeing an executive coach, and she was asking where all the partners are doing it, which is actually really interesting. And she said, tell me what you value. And it's a really hard question to answer, actually. It's maybe pathetic that it's hard, but I had to think about it. And I was like, I think I value 2 things. I value hard work and demonstrating to my kids that you should always work hard, no matter what you're working at. And I value closeness with the people that I really care about, which at the end of the day is not a huge list of people. So I would say maybe after I can't point to a moment when that crystallized for me about what mattered, but it is true that when I look back on the last decade or 2, it feels like I've been guided by those values.
So where did that take you?
I mean, so now I work full time. I work in this business. We live in Cambridge, Massachusetts. We live in the same house. This is our 24th year in this house. I live a mile from my mom. My kids are both in college. I spent half my time in New York, so I commute to New York a ton. I saw Skylar Roach this week, which is great. And that's kind of the phase of my life I'm in now. I published a book probably 7 years ago. I used to write very regularly on a blog, and I wrote for publication a lot of essays, basically. I'm not doing that so much now, but I don't think that's gone. I think it's just that will be a different phase. I also fundamentally, I'm not great at fiction. I'm not good at fiction. I don't love to write about myself, and my kids are now too old to write about them. So I'm also trying to figure out what my topic is going to be.
Interesting.
So
Yeah.
that's where I am.
Is there like a list that you've compiled about potential topics?
No, I mean, I've thought a lot. So I've written 2 books that were not published. And one of your prompts I thought was so interesting. We talked about, one book was about my dad. It's called The Country Without Maps. And one was about raising a preteen daughter, which is about my daughter, and it was called Wonder Girls. And it was about, that one I have an agent who I love, and we went out to publishers of that. And what was interesting is you ask about what it's like to write personally on the internet and if that is vulnerable. And I hear that all the time. And the truth is, it's really not, because I control what I write. And when I was publishing a memoir, all the publishers, had questions. We want to hear more about her husband. We want to hear more about this. And I was like, in a book setting, you have much less control because there's an expectation. And I realized there's just certain things that I want to talk about. So that's that didn't proceed, obviously. I can imagine writing, I thought a lot about writing about, the quotes and the poems that mean a lot to me and structuring it. I don't know if it's by quote or it's by episode, by day, or I don't know how you structure it. That's a big part of my brain space. I've thought about writing about loneliness, which I think is really interesting. Because certainly of late, there's so much written about as an epidemic in this country. I don't know. I guess I could write about being 50.
You could.
I don't know that.
I don't.
I mean, what was great about the book I published is that I didn't write it. So it was so easy for me to pitch it. I don't love talking about myself, as we discussed. So I was like, I didn't write this book. I can pitch it all day long. Other people's amazing words. I wrote the intro. That's it. and I edited them. But so
Yeah. Yeah. So what was the book about? What was
the
it
book was
called?
called On Being 40-ish, and it was, I think it was actually, I don't even know. I think it was like 12 or 14 essays by female writers about topics having to do with midlife around 40. And so some of them were specific, like on my 40th birthday, and some of them were like, this happened to me at this point in my life. And some of them were, we had an illustration in there. So we were trying to capture the essence of what it is to be in that point of your life. And I think it was successful.
Well, that sounds super interesting to me. It's been on my mind a lot. Tell us what a Design So Vast, your blog, is about, and where does this quote come from?
Yeah. It's my favorite quote. It's by Louise Erdrich, who's one of my favorite writers. And the quote is, "There's no such thing as a complete lack of order, only a design so vast it appears unrepetitive up close." It was almost called Tempus Fugit, which is the Latin for time flies. So which also gets to the same awareness of time passage. I mean, what is the blog about? It started on a whim in the fall of 2006. Like I was, I don't even think there was, I think I was using Blogger. Like it was like I almost had to code to get to it. I wanted to remember my kids at that age. And I've always taken a ton of pictures, and I still do. But I wanted to remember like what they were saying and what they were doing. And so it really, for many years, was pretty much about that. And I printed out all the posts, which I'm grateful. I did maybe like the last year, but it's very rarely now that I write. And I have them all on a bookshelf in our family room. So I feel like I have a really wonderful chronicle of their years that also included photographs. But then I started writing more essayistic stuff about what it was like to be the certain age I was, or at the certain point in life. I was telling you when we were talking about reading glasses, I think it's so easy when talking about topics like sensitivity and time. It's so easy to speak in general terms. And that is, I think, often compelling, but lacks of something. So I'm really interested in the very granular and the very specific. And there's a great quote by Gail Godwin that says, "The more you focus on the singular and the strange, the more you will access the universal." I may be butchering the second half of it, but you get the gist. And so one thing I got in the habit of doing is writing about on my birthday every year, on my kids' birthdays, like what is happening right now? Like this is 35. I'm sitting on the sidelines of the baseball, packing lunches. I'm, being really granular. Or in my HBS reading, we're talking about reading glasses and Wordle and your parents moving to assisted living, and it's like, I find there's a lot of power in the details in a moment. So that was kind of one thing I was hoping my blog would capture. I had a very strong sense from a very early age of being other from my family. And my parent, I'm one of two, so it was two girls, my parents. We moved around a ton. I remember this semester. I was born in Cambridge, Massachusetts. When I was 3, we moved to Paris. When I was 8, we moved back. When I was 12, we moved to London. When I was 15, I came to 16. I came to 16. I came to Exeter. I was a new upper. My parents stayed in London for that year. So there was a lot of back and forth, which I don't think I would call suffering, but it was challenging. My family was always, my dad was gone all the time. He traveled like crazy. So it was mostly my mom and my sister and I, and they are very alike. And I'm very different. And have always been. So I think that sensitivity you're talking about, I've been aware of that my whole life. And so I'm not saying other people aren't like that, but it's a little harder at the age of 8 or 10 or 12 or 16 even to communicate that. I think I've always had a moment of like, even now as an adult, when you meet somebody and you're like, oh, that's like a kindred spirit. I talk about native speakers. I talk about Gloria a lot. There's a great book. I'll go into a show. A woman talks about somebody who's a native speaker. And that to me is very resonant. Like when you meet somebody and you're instantly like, that's one of my people. So I didn't really feel that as a kid. And so I felt very, I guess I wouldn't call it suffering, but there was loneliness that kind of marked. And moving around was really stressful for me.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, being a parent now, I actually exactly understand what you're saying, right? It's actually the word comes to mind is dislocation for you,
Hmm.
maybe.
Yeah.
Does that resonate?
Yeah. Yes. And yes. And it felt, I had a lot of anxiety around fear goodbyes my whole life. And, um, yeah. And the fear of abandonment. And yeah.
I can relate to that one. I can relate to that one. It only took me till I was like 40 practically to understand that.
Yeah.
And like years of therapy of like, why can't I have a relationship that works?
Now, you-
Why do I keep picking all the wrong relationships? And it's a pattern, right?
yeah.
It's like you pick what's familiar to you.
Okay.
And so if abandonment is what's familiar to you, you can
Yeah.
misconstrue that as a form of love. And so I think learning about secure attachment was important for me.
Uh-huh.
So what you're saying, I wouldn't discount whatsoever the fact that you would call it or not call it suffering compared to
Uh-huh.
somebody else. What you went through, and it for you,
Yeah.
it was very much, kind of dislocation that, especially when you're a kid, especially now that I'm a parent, like I can totally get that. Like every
Yeah.
couple 3 years, as you're growing up, if you're moving around and having to make new friends and go to new
Yeah. Yeah.
schools, and like everything that was familiar is no longer there.
And I think also because you're so, first time I thought of this until right now, everywhere we went, we were new and we were starting over. So that meant we spent a lot of time with my mother, my sister, and I, because dad was never there. And because I didn't feel super connected, it was like I just felt lonely a lot, you know?
Yeah, I get it. That actually, I've always wondered. These are the kind of impressions I got about your work over the last couple decades. Being a classmate and just sort of seeing it from the periphery, I always wonder. I was like, wow, she looks deeply sensitive to me and emotional. It's like, I wonder what's going
Well,
on.
it wasn't until I read that book by Susan Cain that I realized that there's three categories: introversion, sensitivity, and shyness. And they're actually totally separate from each other. People assume introverts are all, but they're not always. I happen to be all. But it was like a light went on when I read that book. And I don't know if you've read it, but there's a whole section about HBS. And I was like, because I didn't love Exeter. I really didn't love HBS. It's like everywhere. I love Princess, so I don't think I've hated everywhere. But like, it just that book like helped me understand so much about life.
What were the three?
Introversion and extroversion, shyness, and sensitivity.
And these are like the three kind of prototypes of like
No,
all
no,
people.
they're just three separate characteristics. And like you have, I know introverts who are very outgoing and introverts who are not shy. They just
Uh-huh.
need to be allowed to recharge.
Mm-hmm.
Or people who are super sensitive and extroverted. It just happens that I'm all three: introverted,
Interesting.
sensitive, and shy. And so,
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And I think when you're 18 or 16 to 18, you're still so like unformed clay.
yeah, totally.
Well, from what I remember, what I mainly remember is just seeing you around the cross country course all the time with all of our running teams. And now that we've gotten to know each other again, and I've heard your story a little bit about leaving England and your family behind and showing up as an upper in a new dorm, right? You were night house,
Yeah.
which before had been a boys' dorm, but your year had been turned into girls.
Yeah. I don't know if we were the first or second year girls, but it was newly girls. Yeah.
Yeah. So that experience, and
Not
you're
great.
not the first person who told me this. I met another new old friend who was also a new upper, and she was in Molten House, and the way she described it was very similar.
I wish I'd been in Wilton House, actually. I feel like there were a lot of women, I don't know who you're talking about, but I feel like there were several new uppers that I would have liked having in my
Right.
dorm with me.
Well, yeah, that's the thing. Like,
I mean, whatever,
you
you know.
get stuck in a
Yeah.
silo there in your own right. Like, that's the thing with
I
this.
didn't love the way you don't move dorms.
Yeah, say something.
But I was like super trapped, and
Yeah,
so there was just no way about it. And it was
yeah,
interesting. My daughter toured Exeter, and being on the other side, I know you talked to other people whose kids go there, so more salient. Obviously, Katerina's side goes there. It was very interesting being on the other side of it. It was the fall of 16 and winter of 17,
hmm
and she chose not to go, and she got in, which was great. It was super good fortune. But it was weird to be on the other side of it. And it was like, it kind of brought it back, you know?
Going back to kind of where you are in your life and career,
Mm-hmm.
and also your experience. Where are you now? I know you're working really hard and writing. You'll come back to it probably with some renewed focus.
Mm-hmm.
But what's your days like?
My days are, this is my office. I sit here when I'm not in New York every day, all day. My life is very simple. Like, my kids are not here. I just work. We have a 4-year-old Labradoodle that we got during COVID. And my husband and I live alone in the house because the kids are gone. And I don't do a lot socially, and I just work and I read. I would say the biggest question on my mind of late is how long I want to keep working in this. I don't ever want to not work, but I don't know that I want this configuration forever. I know I don't want this configuration forever, and so I need to figure out what that looks like. I don't know if you feel this. I feel conscious of not slowing down, but I feel like I get tired, and I feel like I don't feel like I have. I mean, I work with one of the best things about working for me is that all my colleagues, I have 5, like I said, 4 partners who are, I'm the oldest by a pretty wide margin. I got 2 in their 40s, 2 in their 30s, and then everybody else on my team, my work team of 20, is like 25. So I work with young people all the time, which is awesome, and it keeps me young. But I'm also really aware of, I'm like, I feel really. I'm also maybe tired because I'm getting up at 4. I don't know. That's just accumulating. So I think that, that's where life is. I feel very, very, one of the things you realize, I think, at our age is the good fortune in saying everything's fine. And like the great blessing that a regular life and a regular day represents, because we're old enough to have seen when it's not regular, and that's not good.
Right. Routine
Yeah.
can be quite comforting.
Yes.
But you've had I feel like you're underselling a little bit yourself, Lindsay.
I don't know about that.
Well, here's why I say that. I think that you have phases, ebbs and flows, right?
Yeah.
And it feels to me like you've had almost like you've run the marathon and you've kind of come to the end of that. And you're kind of like, okay, now what? Or I'm like trying to like get my bearings here, right? Because this rush to kind of grow up and get like kind of the MBA and everything, and then have kids, and like now it's like you're just starting to experience life without all the on your shoulders.
I mean, the flip side between the way you do it, the way I do it, is that like I was really never a young adult. Like, as soon as I graduated from college, I met my husband a year later, and we got married a year later, and now I had 2, you know what I mean? Like, so I never really had, so I guess on some level, maybe that's what I'm doing now. Oh, yeah?
But just the work that you were doing with Megan as a friend, I'm curious if you wouldn't mind telling us more about that. Because Megan and we spent a lot of time together talking about the work she's done around grief. And a lot of that was predicated on your encouragement and also your friendship with her.
My dad dropped dead of a heart attack in 2017. He was still working full time. He was coming to my house for dinner. He went for a run and he had a heart attack and died. He was 73. I wrote a lot about that. So I wrote a lot about grief. I wrote a lot about the unexpected. And I actually just texted Megan after I listened to your episode with her. I wrote a lot about how I thought that becoming a parent would make me an adult. And actually I realized that losing a parent made me feel like an adult. And for the first time in the wake of my dad's death, I felt like this incredible, this awesome sense of like life and death. And like, I'm really, so anyway, then Megan's dad died a few years later. We were in touch like on Facebook, and she had written a bunch of, I don't know when I started observing her writing. And I think it might've been after her mother died that she started writing on Facebook, and she wrote a piece about wearing her mom's socks, and she wrote, so I and I'm not particularly on Facebook, but I'm on my computer all day, every day, so I do tend to see things. And she wrote just this one piece, and I remember it was like, I've never been a good sleeper. I think it might have been in the middle of the night, and I was like, this is beautiful. You should keep writing about this. And I'm so sorry your parents died, my dad died. It's not the same, but I'm familiar. So then we became friends, I would say. And so I don't know that, I think she gives me way too much credit in encouraging her, but it was super clear to me that she had a beautiful writing voice and something really powerful to convey. And so I'm grateful she did that. And then I was really fortunate to read her book early on. And it's beautiful. But I think, I've been watching what she's doing with a fair amount of awe.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it seems like you help catalyze it, actually.
I mean, I think maybe when you're just starting out, you need somebody, and it's not like she's now much more accomplished than I, but I have been doing it for a while. I had a couple of people in my corner. I had a teacher I worked with, etc. So I think maybe it meant a lot to have somebody say, keep going.
I think that's important.
I understand.
That's like the definition of a really good friend.
Well, if a small thing I've done in my life is help Megan's voice emerge, then I feel like I've done a lot.
I think you have, and I think that was pretty big deal. And it speaks to the kind of wider community. I think the idea that we do come from the same small town and we're here to support each other, rooting for each other and interconnecting with one another to help each other out and give each other hope and support and perspective is like a huge gift.
Yeah. I mean, do you think that everybody who goes to high school, anybody feels that way? Or do you think it's more charged because we were in the woods of New Hampshire with no phone or no computer? And I think it probably is, right?
I think, yes, those things, but I think as well, and I got this from Shauna, she spent a lot of time in her career sending kids to Exeter from Prep for Prep in New York and also her own daughter. So I think she's, as a person who's an education expert and social worker, she's like, I think it's because when you live together in a boarding school setting, that it is a special experience. It's different. But to answer your question, I do think Exeter is special. I do think being at a boarding school is special. I do think Exeter uniquely is different because of the cultural ethos around the Harkness table that it builds around mutual respect and learning through conversation and teaching one another in that model as opposed to being lectured to by a teacher.
Yeah.
Because what it, I think, inculcates is everybody has something to say that's worth hearing.
And everybody's worth listening to, exactly. Just what you just said. Yeah.
I really, really wish Exeter values like that could be amplified around to the rest of the country. I wish there was some way to do that. And so maybe digital podcasting is the way. I don't know.
I mean, we're all like in Exeter's defense, or I don't know, maybe we're all out there in our own little way doing it, right? I mean, this fall, my college friends and I, three of whom at Exeter, Skylar, Gloria, and Katarina, we get together every year. We have a weekend. And this year it was in Nashville. And I was flying, because I'm in New York all the time, I was flying New York to Nashville. And I was on the plane sitting next to a guy who I actually generally don't talk to people. As you can probably imagine, I don't really talk to strangers. And this guy was there talking. And finally I was like, all right, I don't talk to him. Anyway, he was a New York City cop. We talked the entire flight. He's a very avid Trump supporter. I'm not. And when the plane landed, he said, I just want you to know that I've never had a conversation where I felt like the person I disagree with on almost everything. And you really listen to me. And I really appreciate that. And it didn't feel hostile or confrontational. So we each if we do that once a week, we're doing our own little part, right? It's just hard because you see the big picture and it's so depressing, but that made me feel good. I was like, all right, well, it wasn't trying anything extra hard. It was just normal.
I mean, that's beautiful. I mean, that's exactly right. Right. And probably Exeter's not the only place that
I'm sure it's
teaches this,
but it is at the core of Exeter, which is.
I agree. Yeah. So I think for this audience, Lindsay, there's a lot of things that we could close out on. And I'm curious about which direction is important to you, because there are a lot of young ladies at Exeter that probably want to have a career in finance one day or an executive search, right? And there's, I'm sure, a ton of experience that you could lend around your business career and how to have your own company and not being an entrepreneur, which we could help them with. And, then there's also how do you parent across the ages of 10 to 20, 22, the way you have, and what's next? What should I watch out for? Things are changing quickly.
Yeah.
All of a sudden, I can tell you that with a 10 and a half year old.
Yeah.
And then
she in fifth grade? Fourth grade?
She's in fifth grade.
Fifth grade,
yeah. She'll be starting middle school, sixth grade soon.
Yeah.
The other one will be starting third grade. It feels like the last little bit of
Yeah.
baby life.
I remember
Especially
somebody said 8 is the end of early childhood,
is it?
according to
Or
who knows who, but I mean
that's
that.
more,
Yeah.
that makes sense. And I'm not someone that wanted to be a dad or have kids or anything. So I was just like, no way. It's like,
What's the
and
best
I
thing
love it.
though? Yeah.
Really happy. I love it. I wouldn't change it. But it's clearly owns me, and like everything else around my life that I thought is not the same or what I thought was going
Mm,
to happen or expected. And I have no regret, but it's still, you accept it, I think, is kind of what happens, right?
yeah.
And, and also this, empty nesting experience. There are
Mm,
lots of our classmates that do have that, and folks that'll be accessing this on the Exonians Facebook page in the community, they'll hear that. So there's so much you have to give. I feel like,
yeah. I mean, so I hope that there's young ladies and young men at Exeter who want to have careers in finance. I don't know that I have any particular words of wisdom, but they can call me and I'm happy to talk to them. I would say that I think, I mean, I don't have any words of wisdom on parenting other than to say it is the central and abiding identity of my life. And I think I did always want to have kids, although I'd never babysat. I'd never changed a diaper till I had a kid. Like I was definitely, and we, I mean, we were surprised by how quickly and how early it happens. It was not expected. I'm a very, very countercultural parent in this current day. I'm a really big believer in letting kids fail, which everybody says, but I think a lot of people don't do. I never cleaned up after my kids. I never did their laundry. They're very self-sufficient. Their rooms are super messy. Not my daughter. My daughter's like insanely neat and organized. But my son is a mess, and I just sort of shut the door. So I'm a big believer in that. I remember, our kids are now, my kids are in college, where a lot of our friends' kids are applying, and people talk a lot about we're applying to college. And that's just like an extremely foreign language to me. I really, really don't think that way. And I don't personally think it's the best way to handle it, but everybody does what works for them. So I would say my opinion on parenting has been to basically get out of their way. I also wrote another thing on my blog that I remember getting attacked for was writing that they're not mine. They come through me. And it's that Khalil Gibran, your children are not your children. Life's longing for its hour, something. And so many people went after me. Of course they're yours. You're mine. You're raising them. And I'm like, I don't see that. I mean, my dad used to say parenting is 95% nature. And I totally believe that. So like, that informs, I guess. I just feel like I want to keep them alive. I want to be and actually somebody else told me something when Grace was a teenager, which you're not quite at, but soon. Somebody was like, think of you're like the pool wall. They're doing laps and they're going to push off you. And it's your job to just sit there and not react. And I thought of that a lot because they also look to you. So with regard to the college thing, I think people get really emotional about college and the kids look at their parents and what they see is this is the most important thing that will ever happen. And it's like, that's not, in my opinion, productive for anybody. Just they're always watching, right? And I think that like what we do is just so much more important than what we say. So I guess I'm just kind of riffing, but that's my opinion. I feel like many parents today are much more involved and helping their kids more than I do. And I'm not saying that's right or wrong, but that's just how I've approached it.
makes sense. It does make sense. It makes a ton of sense. I mean,
Yeah. We're lucky. Hopefully most of us will if we have a healthy kid, we're all lucky, right? That's like, we were able to give birth to a healthy child who remains healthy. That's already extraordinary,
that is a
right?
blessing,
Yeah.
and it is, yeah, it is amazing. So, okay, that's extremely helpful. So, last question or two I have for you then. If there was an Exeter person, living or not, with us that you could have access to, that you would be able to have dinner with, who would that be?
I think I've always wanted to meet John Irving, right? The writer who went extra, writes about extra, Garp. I mean, I'd like to have dinner with our class again. I go back and, I mean, if we could go back, right? I don't know, it's maybe not the question you have in mind, But in terms of famous experience, I'd probably pick our, I mean, my favorite teacher, and it's so interesting, that group chat was by Mile Mistrelli. So if I could go back and have dinner with him, that would be amazing.
Yeah, I know he was important to you. Can you tell me more about why? I had him lower year, and I know you had him probably upper year, right?
Mhm.
He struck me as like the quintessential, like the best Exeter teacher ever.
I can't explain to you. I just absolutely adored him. And I remember writing, in fact, I have, for some reason, I can't keep track of anything and I can't remember what I had for dinner yesterday, but I have my papers from Exeter in the basement. And so I have his notes, his handwriting, which I like. One of the things that I feel like our kids will never have, those people that you see their handwriting, you'll know who they are instantly just because that was how we communicated. Mr. Valhouli's handwriting is super, I don't know, powerful to me. So I just used to write these incredibly personal essays for him or pieces of work. And I was super unhappy at Exeter, as we've established. And I was lonely. So I spent a lot of time with him. I used to have dinner with his family on the weekends sometimes. He wrote after I got divorced from Princeton, he wrote a letter. I don't know who I was talking to. Maybe, or I don't have any idea who was my college counselor at Exeter was, but whoever that person was probably said you should have a teacher write a letter. So I asked him to follow leader. Was not one of my recommenders, but he wrote me an extra letter. And after he died, I called Princeton and I said, is there any chance I can have it? And they were like, oh, no, we can't show that. And then I was like, oh. So I dedicated my thesis to him. We read his favorite poem at our wedding. Like, he just remains super integral to me. Why? I don't know. I just feel like he was there at the right time. And he was like, he used to take us, we used to have class in the quad in the spring. I think it must have did we have one teacher from both terms junior year, do you think? Is that possible? No, because I have Mr. Knowles too. I don't know. I had him somewhere in there and he would have class walking us around and he was like, yeah, the Greeks did it. Anyway, I just thought he was
Do you
wonderful.
remember? He would talk about the Greeks and the Isle of Crete quite a bit.
Yes. Oh, yes.
What was his handwriting like?
It was small and cramped and tilted back slightly.
As you talked about it, I remember now.
Yeah. Like you would recognize it, I
really
think.
small, fine
Yes.
little letters. Yeah.
And like, I feel like one of the things that has, I say it has gotten worse. My handwriting is just terrible now. And his was beautiful, but like really small. And I feel like he would write in like felt tip or something.
What about what did he teach you?
That's such a great question. I mean, we wrote letters after I graduated. He taught me how much solace there can be in the written word. Like his favorite poem was If I Got That Poem by C.F. Kivafi, which hung on the wall of his room, and that's what we read at our wedding. I don't know. I wish I had a better answer for you. He just taught me he also taught me like you can make a life doing this, which obviously I have not really done. So I'm not totally following his example, but he also just seemed like a wonderful husband and dad. And he just seemed like he had a very, again, with the outside looking in, it seemed like he was a very committed, devoted family man. I think, I don't know, did you go to his funeral?
No. See, this is one of the things about being in California.
Oh, yeah, you were so
far away.
Well, no, you were, wasn't it? It was like a year after we graduated, or 2 years after we graduated. I went from Princeton.
Really? Was it then?
Yeah, he died when we were in college. Remember, I don't know if you remember, his favorite writer was Andre Dubus, the senior one, who was in a wheelchair. And we were in the gym. And I remember that I was like, this is the first time I'm going back to Exeter. And I went to the funeral, and Andre Dubus, who was like this massive, hirsute, very manly, right? In a wheelchair, but super manly. Stories are all about that. And he wheeled into the middle of the room. There were thousands of people there. And he spoke, and I don't remember what he said, but at the end, he looked up and he said, Vanya, do you hear me? And like, it gives me chills now. Think about it. Anyway, Andre Dubus' son, whose name is Andre Dubus III, is a writer. He was reading at a Boston area bookstore, I don't know, 5 years ago. And I went and introduced myself. And he was like, oh my God, you know James Sullivan. And we like took it offline and had like a half an hour conversation. So I feel like a lot of people left him. Yeah. But I can't put in words why he was so great, which I really should think more about it.
when I meet Exeter writers, there's always an Exeter English teacher that sort of underneath it somewhere, so it doesn't surprise me that Mr. Valhouli was that person for you. I've heard that about Mr. Greer for others. I've heard that about Mr. Weber for others, who I was very close with. And that's kind of the neat thing I think about that experience, in addition to the whole Harkness thing we were talking about. It's just, there's just something special about the whole experience and the way that the people that just show up in some important way, right?
Yeah.
Here's the thing I remember about Mr. Valhouli. And to this day, there are a couple of things. I can't remember if there was a picture of him playing soccer at Colby College in black and white in the classroom or not, or if that was something I saw later. But I definitely have this image of this guy who, he was a big dude, right?
Yeah, but
kind of
he's
stocky.
short.
Right.
But yeah, totally. Yeah.
Strong and stocky, kind of, right? Kind of soccer player, bald, olive skin, kind of immigrant kid, right? Kind of like me. So there was a lot there, very New England kind of persona. So that was one thing that stuck out, that image of the athleticism, the kind of like core, kind of powerful athleticism.
Yeah, and that's how he died, right? I mean, he was skating.
I know.
Yeah.
I know. And it's just, it's hard.
But that's like, I mean, it's so tragic, but I bet that I remember sending my thesis to his widow. And we had exchanged some letters after he died. And I don't have it, but I have a memory that she said he died doing what he loved. Yeah. I mean, nobody would wish to die. It was 52 or 48? Yeah. But he was in his natural element.
Was your thesis about Debussy?
No, my thesis was about the mother-daughter relationship in the work of 3 contemporary poets who are now not contemporary anymore. They were like 20th century.
Which poets?
Anne Sexton, Maxine Cumin, and Adrienne Rich.
Nice. Very nice. That's amazing.
Yes.
That's very cool. So the thing I was going to share with you, though, which I think is kind of cool to share, is that he described, to your point about being a family man, very dedicated family man, and that's what makes this hard for me to think about and talk about, because that's kind of what I'm trying to be. And he would be one of the models that I think of, because till this day, he sat there and talked to us about what it is to be in love.
With his wife?
Yeah. In the Harkness Table. I don't know how it came up, but at some point the conversation was, what does it mean to be in love? What is it like to be in love? Can you imagine a bunch of puberty-ridden 15-year-old kids around a Harkness Table?
That's so
Phillips
cool.
Hall with this beautiful man. I believe his classroom was on the first floor.
It was on the right when you walked in.
Exactly. And I'm thinking it must have been winter term. It was warm. It was like warm in the room, but cold outside.
Yeah.
And that whole like physical experience is one thing I really miss, is that experience of the smells of the and the feelings of the room.
And Megan said the radiators, the clanking. Yeah.
I miss that a lot.
Yeah.
And I miss New England, frankly, a lot. I don't know if I'll ever get back, but I miss that whole part of the country. And so he just kind of started speaking. He started looking up, and he had this very wistful kind of look. And he goes, oh, being in love, when you're in love, there's just nothing like that. It's so hard to, I don't even remember exactly the words he gave us, but it was this feeling he conjured up of this fully lost, embraced kind of acceptance. And you're in the right place when you're in love, or you're being loved. I still think about that. I still think about that. And to me, that's, I kind of connect that to what secure attachment is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Like the idea of being in a secure attachment is you're fully accepted for who you are as you are, imperfections and everything else, all in one embrace, and that you are loved. And of course, the kind of love he was talking about was more romantic love and love of his wife, which is different than family love, but it's all kind of somewhat connected.
Yeah, for sure.
Right?
Yeah.
And so to me, that was like something that many, probably over, what is this going to be, 89, 90, I guess? 6+ years ago now.
Yeah.
That I heard this from him.
He used to think about it.
So yeah, it is. He's just, wow, and kind of a wow person and an amazing person. So that's what I remember about Mr. Valhouli. And that one's hard.
Yeah.
That one's very difficult for me still. Yeah. Because you don't even know in those moments how they are impacting you or how much
Yeah.
they're teaching you or
Yeah.
how
Yeah.
important they are to your kind of consciousness.
Not till
But
after. Yeah. And you can't tell.
that's there deep in the like subconscious of how I even looked at love.
Yeah. That's amazing. The quotes
Kind of
tell.
incredible. And what was the poem and the author that
It's
he
Ithaca with a
with it?
K by C.F. Kavafi. Maybe C.P. Kavafi, but I think it's F.
I will put it
Yeah.
in the notes.
Yeah.
Okay, last question. So, who would you nominate as a guest on this podcast? That
I think someone already nominated her. I think it's Takuchi.
okay, why?
Well, so we're not in dating touch. I adore her, and I will never forget getting a text from her, I don't know, 10 years ago. She's also an introvert, by the way. She's the outgoing introvert. And she was like, I'm not going to hate being in the lights official because I'm an introvert. And I was like, no, you're going to be great at it. And I would love to, I haven't heard her update. I bet she's great at her job, and I would love to hear what it's like for her. She also has kids in college, I think, at least some. So.
Yeah, she's very similar in the sense that she got her kids done first. I wish I did that.
Daughter who must be like still at home, but yeah.
Correct. She's got a college age, like 2 college age boys that
And
are
their
like one is
daughters at
probably
home?
at the end, one is sort of in the beginning to middle, and then yes, she's got a daughter. Yeah, exactly. I will second the nomination. I've third the nomination because John Gorley also nominated her.
I would also love Roxanne Gay.
Okay.
I know other people have said that. She may or may not want to talk, but I mean,
I would love Roxanne Gay to come on.
I mean, I think probably a lot of people are asking for her time. I've never met her. I read her work. I love her writing. I actually asked her to be in my book, and we were at the time, Simon & Schuster was publishing an author that she didn't agree with, so she declined because of that. But then they pulled out of that book, so it could.
Yeah.
Anyway. But
no, she is super busy. I mean, she is super busy, so I hear you. I would love to get her. If she hears this nomination from you, I hope she'll respond. I know she came in for the Founders Day Award, I think it was. Or some award. I don't remember
that's
what.
Right. I think I only recently saw that. Pretty recently, right? Yeah.
Great. Well, I will see if I can get her.
I agree.
Yeah, I will try. I will try to get everybody over time. Yeah, and if there are any podcast editors out there in the class that want to like jump in and help me out with this, I would take it.
I really appreciate that you're doing it. It's such an extraordinary project, but I know it's a lot of work.
Thank you. No, it's a passion project, and I love Exeter, and I have, I love my friends and classmates, and to me, like, this is such a great chance for me, right, to get to like reconnect with you and other people, and it's just a huge honor, honestly, Lindsay. So thanks. I mean, thank you so much for wanting to come on.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah. So I'll talk to you soon, and I will get this out in the next few weeks. Thanks for sharing today.
Of course. I appreciate it. Take care.
All right. Bye-bye.